Welcome back to the Choose Life Quest. This is the discussion for day 3, the principle of choosing life.
In this life, which is not the ultimate reality, it's just this physical existence, we're in this world of polarity. There's black and there's white. There's evil and there's good. And there's life and there's death. And when we were talking about this, like, in order for things to live, there is a life cycle, and that involves death and replacement of things. We were talking about the fires that are going on in this area and in California, and how some of these trees and forests need the fires in order to keep reproducing. And we were talking about how cells in our bodies need to die off in order for new ones to come in. And that's happening continuously all the time. Because if you just have life and new cells all the time, that's called cancer. It's too much, because in this human physical existence, there has to be the concept of death too, and recreation and rebirth. That's what it means to be, on some level, born again in the spirit.
Life and death has a necessary balance in the physical existence, that God set it up that way. He said, be fruitful and multiply. But if nobody ever died, there would be a practical limit to that.
And so for the concept of this course and changing your life, in order to choose life, you also have to die to your old self. It's a literal replacement. Remember the scene in Indiana Jones where he's going up to the thing that has the weight
the
on
little
it.
idol.
Yeah, the little idol, right? And he has this bag of sand, and he's emptying it out to get it just the right weight so he doesn't trip the switch, and he has to take the idol and put the bag on really, really quick.
The quick switch.
Yeah, it's kind of like that's how personal growth is. That's how becoming more like God is. We have to take off the idol. That's a really good example, actually. But we have to put off the old self, is how the Bible calls it, and put in the new self, the new man, which is Christ.
And fortunately, if we don't do it perfectly, there's not a great big rolling death ball coming to get us.
You have chosen poorly. I think that's the second time I've quoted that in this class. So when Jesus says to die to yourself, it sounds very hard to understand. What does that mean? But we can understand it as in our bodies have billions of cells, and the old ones that are not up to date with who we are now need to go away. They need to die and be replaced with new ones to keep us living.
And there's a natural balance and a procession. New cells replace old cells.
And so dying to yourself isn't this mystical concept of, it's just theoretical. The fields of psychology and therapists know that you can't just tell people to repeat affirmations. I am good. I am great. I am worthy, without first letting go of the traumatic things that have happened to them and the lies that they believe. Because if you tell yourself all these good things, but you still have a bunch of garbage that hasn't been flushed out yet, then it's not going to fit. The good stuff isn't going to fit. It's like your metaphor with the rocks in the bucket and the water.
And I realize it's kind of like, here's another very earthy, straightforward metaphor. It's like food in your fridge. Every so often, you got to go through and you got to dig the stuff out of the back that really shouldn't be in there anymore. Because when you go to the store and you come home and, there's all this old stuff in the fridge, there's not room for the new stuff. You have to get rid of the old that's kind of gone bad and you really don't want around anymore. Yeah. So you have room for the new things that you've brought in.
And going off of the fridge analogy, if you keep trying to make a cake and you don't have eggs and milk and flour and all the things you need for a cake and sugar, all you have is pickles and relish and orange juice. Well, you try to make a cake with those ingredients, it's going to taste terrible. You need to go out to the store and get some new ingredients to put in. And then you try to make the cake again. So if you keep having results in your life that you don't like, you need to be like, okay, what's in my fridge?
Yeah. Are your recipes filled with the wrong ingredients for what you want to actually end up with?
Yes, exactly.
And yet choosing life is just as much identifying what ingredients you need to add as it is making the recipe correctly.
Yeah, it needs both, right? So we have this illustration of man in the middle, each of us. That's our conscious mind. And on one side is choices that represent life and walking in the spirit. And the other side is choices that represent death, things that lead to death and walking in the flesh.
And it's the old stereotype of the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other from the old cartoons.
And that's what spiritual warfare really is all about, because we have God's spirit pulling us one way, and we have our carnal nature and all the forces of evil pulling us the other way. And every single moment we get to choose which one are we following.
And it's not necessarily frequently two sentient cartoon characters trying to influence us. It's really the two sides of ourselves, the carnal, fleshly 1.0 version of our consciousness, and the spiritually minded, converted, doing your best to follow God part.
And this is why every single person that's ever existed has a spiritual side to them. They have the human spirit that God put into them that wants to draw them the good way. That's why you have good in the world.
The people, everyone on some level legitimately wants to do good and help others.
And we have a conscience. That's literally drawing us that way. Everybody can tune into that. And we also, each of us, every single human that's existed, has that negative side of us, that flesh, that carnal victim that wants to pull us down. And we have both. And it's all about which one are you feeding? And what do you feed it? You feed it thoughts. The thoughts are the seed that you plant that creates the emotion that waters whatever plant you're growing. And this process is all about uprooting the old and planting something new. You have to do both. So let's get into the model a little bit more, because we're the conscious. We have our minds, we have our hearts, we have our whole essence that gets to choose. If we are present in this moment, we get to choose. And we're always getting pulled one way or the other. But what we're choosing is literally choosing to respond or react. If we have a thought that comes into our head, that thought comes from two places, right? It comes from your spirit or it comes from your flesh. And you have to be, first of all, aware to notice the thought.
To see the thought that's there.
Right. Because if you don't have awareness, you're going to miss it.
It's like you got to turn on the light in the room to see where the furniture is.
Exactly. If you have a dusty room and you shake like a pillowcase, you're not going to see anything if the light's off, but you turn the light on, wow, you see all the dust that's in the room. So sometimes it looks worse as soon as you start actually observing.
Oh, yeah. Seeing your thoughts is a terrifying prospect.
It is, especially
when you're not used to it.
And especially if you think you are your thoughts. Most people don't differentiate their thoughts from themselves. I think, therefore I am. It's not correct. We aren't our thoughts. Our thoughts are the things that are pulling us one way or another.
And that's the same thing that we've covered with people getting triggered. If you equate something you believe with your actual self, someone who doesn't agree with you fundamentally thinks you are not a valid human being when you are identified with something you believe.
Exactly.
And
that is the self that needs to die. And that's why it feels like literally a life or death reaction when somebody attacks your beliefs. You literally have a physical response that's the same as if a bear was in the room with you.
Right. Somebody disagreeing with you means you need to fight for your right to survive.
Because if you're identified with those thoughts, you think that's you. Well, if somebody comes and attacks you, it literally sends this fight or flight, cortisol, all sorts of bad like hormones and chemicals through your body and gets you into this fight or flight. And if you ever notice yourself getting into that, I mean, that's an extreme version of like a tiny little thought. If you notice that you're getting triggered like that, that is, no matter how you're feeling or thinking, that is a prime time to realize, oh, wow, I really am identified with something here. This is a huge area for growth. Because the more you get triggered, the more potential there is to grow. If it's a little trigger and you overcome that, there's always that much on the other side of growth. If it's a big trigger and you get over that, it's like it's weighted one way or another.
Yep.
So the first step is to be aware. You have to notice. So what does that look like on a day-to-day basis for you?
Just the act of noticing thoughts that are passing by is the biggest challenge, I think, because you get into the rhythm of the day and, just you're going along and something comes up that's frustrating or annoying or just a thought that elicits an emotion, realizing, oh, that's not the literal truth of what just happened. That's the thought and the consequent feeling that's attached to it. And I need to pause, take a step back, and evaluate what that thought is that's making me feel this way, instead of just going, well, this happened and this is how I feel about it.
Right, that pause is
The pause.
critical. The pause. You have to pause. And, we teach this even to little kids, right? Pause and count to 10, and then you'll feel better.
And it
It
feels like a
makes it
stupid
silly.
platitude. Yes, and it makes it seem
But
makes
it's so
it
well known
seem
because it's true.
childish and ineffective
Yeah.
as an adult. You don't really need to do that. But in effect, no, you actually do
Yes.
way more than it even
And
seems.
I like how you said you need to pause. Anytime you have an emotion that's negative, you need to realize that there's a seed, there's a thought. Thoughts are the seeds. There's a seed thought that is causing that emotion. The emotions come from the thoughts.
And the emotions,
It's actually a vicious cycle. And then the
Right.
emotions create more thoughts that are negative. You get in a cycle.
right? And the emotions are real. It's not saying, oh, well, that's a false emotion.
No,
You
it's a
shouldn't
real
feel that.
emotion.
It's no, you feel the emotion legitimately.
It's real, but it's not the truth.
Exactly.
The reality. It's what's going on in you.
It's real. You are experiencing a legitimate emotion. The trick is winding it one step back to go, what is the thought that brought that emotion into my experience right now? And it sounds kind of airy-fairy, but the idea is, if I'm sitting and doing schoolwork with one of the kids and I'm feeling really frustrated, it's not because doing schoolwork with the kids is really frustrating as the capital T truth of what's happening. The capital T truth of what's happening is I'm sitting and doing schoolwork with the kids. I'm feeling frustrated because the thought I haven't identified is this kid isn't focusing and they're wasting my time. That's what's making me feel frustrated.
And if that thought is in there, we all know that a teacher that sees the best in their pupils respond better to them and they live up to the high expectations. So if we have whatever thought we have, we're kind of creating that on some level because that's what we're drawing out of our students. for
And that is a
example.
hard thing to
It's a hard-
reconcile, is
hard pill
the
to swallow.
thought that I'm having is why I feel this way, or rather, the thought I'm believing because I'm not noticing it
And that's the
is
difference.
why I'm feeling this
You
way.
can notice the thoughts, and every time you notice them and just let them go, you heal it.
Just noticing it without believing it is the pinnacle of the idea of simple, not easy, because it is so hard to disconnect. I'm already feeling a certain way, and I see the thought I'm having that's causing it. How can I choose not to believe it when I'm already feeling that way?
Literally, the way you choose to not believe it is to let it just pass, like a stream of thought, a train of thought. Let the train pass. Let the stream pass. And that's literally what we're talking about when we say choosing life. Like, that's when you catch a thought and you let it go because you know it's not right, or you choose to believe that it's not right because it's causing a negative emotion in you. You literally are choosing life by letting the old self die.
And a tip or a principle that a principle that proves really helpful is that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
In what way?
The more proactively aware you are of your thoughts makes it way easier than having to talk yourself down from an emotion you're already in the throes of.
And that's why it's called a stream of consciousness or a train of thought, because you can be riding that train really far and it might take you a long time to get back to where you started.
A train takes a long time to stop.
That's why, mindfulness exercises, and I know that some people don't understand, and then they got mindfulness gets vilified sometimes. It really just means being aware of your thoughts, and literally God tells us we need to be aware every moment. And so mindfulness exercises.
It's semantics. It comes down to which phraseology do you believe and which phraseology do you say, oh, that's Eastern.
So mindfulness exercises literally just have you sometimes sit there and just be aware and notice what thoughts are coming by. It's not about emptying your mind I don't have anything in there anymore. It's about noticing, oh, wow, there goes a negative thought, and letting it go over and over and just staying present with that. That's taking every thought captive.
It's the principle of the carnal man, looks at his reflection in a mirror and then goes his way and completely forgets.
Yes.
The idea is you're looking at yourself in a mirror internally in where you're focusing, and you're seeing, oh, my hair's kind of messy and I've got some dirt on my face and I need to fix these things. It's seeing the thoughts that are passing by so that you can improve what's going on there.
Yeah, so awareness is key. And one important thing to know is that most of the emotions we feel that are negative aren't actually about the situation that's happening. A lot of the time, I'd say 90% or more of the time, they're actually an old wound that's getting triggered. They're old emotions that got stuck somewhere in your body. There's all sorts of science and studies that show how different organs hold different emotions if we haven't processed them and released them. And you do this on a physical and an emotional and a spiritual level. When you process an old wound, like let's say that you were abused when you were a kid. If you didn't get all of that processed, because most kids wouldn't, because how do you understand that? How do you deal with those emotions as a kid? They're really strong. They get stored in your body somewhere. And literally, as an adult, when people will process these old, like let's say abuse, since that's the example, their body will literally let go of certain chemicals and all sorts of things that they can physically track. That's the first step, is your body physically processes. And you might, and I think everybody has experienced this on some level after you've had a really good cry about something, or like you just know that like God helped you through something and you feel different and better. You might notice, wow, I'm really thirsty. Wow, I'm really exhausted. Or you might like feel like a little ill for a while. Those are literal physical processing symptoms.
Right, having a catharsis that leads to you just like passing out or feeling completely drugged for like a day or two.
Yeah. So there's literal physical releases of things that get stored in our bodies that eventually can create disease and things that disrupt. And then there's also the emotional release. And then that's how we don't get triggered the next time. We know we've successfully chosen life when we've let go of the old things enough that like we don't have those same reactions last time. Or
right.
We don't have those same reactions next time.
Right, where it's not just the same program running in the same predictable way.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing people need to know is that you are not your thoughts. You're not your thoughts. You can literally separate from them and watch them. And so we said thoughts come from either the evil side of the flesh or they come from the spirit. So every thought you have is from one or the other. Which one are you tuned into most of the time? Now, when you're trying to let go of old thoughts, you need to kind of tune in to just listen to what's going on there, and you let it go. Like that's still focusing over here because you're listening to this in order to let it go and turn over here. But we need to replace the old thoughts. So like you can literally just like, even if you just sit right now, it's really interesting. Like if I just sat here, I tuned into the negative thoughts that are going on right now. I hate myself. I'm stupid. I'm dumb. See, I have that stream that's trying to come in right now on this side. I don't know why it's over here. Maybe it's because of my left hand. The left. Choose the right. And then I can tune over to like, okay, what are the thoughts of the spirit that I'm having right now that are trying to come in? I love myself. I'm joyful. Things like that. Like I literally, it's always, you can tune into one or the other. Which one are you choosing to live by and listen to?
And it's fascinating because just hearing you vocalize those, I can automatically fill in knowing that some people will immediately attribute both of those things to, oh, well, there's spiritual forces telling you things and trying to trip you up or trying to trick you or trying to feed you.
They can play off of them.
Right. And it's interesting to realize that sometimes
when we are broadcasting our thoughts.
And sometimes it's accurate, but thinking automatically seeing thoughts that pass by as, oh, that is a sentient, intentional attack on me. It almost sometimes turns into a way of justifying being a victim in your own head, because thinking, oh, I'm being attacked by spiritual forces, and there's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah, and that puts you in the victim role. That puts
right,
you on
because it's happening to you, as opposed to realizing, oh well, this is not something that's happening to me. This is just a fact of being a conscious person physically existing right now, And there are these messages passing by that
Yeah.
I can choose to evaluate.
And that's not to say that there aren't spiritual forces, but the way I see that it works, my current understanding of it, Bernard's gonna be really happy with that. My current understanding of it is anything that we have as a wound or a trauma or like a sin we haven't dealt with, anger or fear or whatever it is, that's ours. However, negative spiritual forces or entities, whatever you want to think of them as, can affect you only in those areas. They can attack when those get triggered. Like
It's a soft spot.
you get riled up, you get angry. Any message that's coming at you from the outside, like a radio tower, that's on the spirit, the wavelength of fear or anger or whatever it is, can get in if you let it. And you're so any unhealed wound that you have, it's like it's right for the picking.
It's amplifying those negative influences.
Yeah. But you get to choose. And that's where spiritual warfare comes into play. And, we war against the spirit, not in the flesh. And that's why, you have to realize you're getting an attack. It doesn't, if it's coming from you or it's coming from outside, it doesn't matter. It's still a negative energy that needs to, or spirit that needs to be fought against with truth.
Right. And ultimately, like, this is some big, scary, intimidating stuff that we're talking about in terms of spiritual forces and everything. And that's, I think, why the Bible really clearly spells out, because it could be something that we're legitimately unsure of many times, is that those who are with us are greater than those who are with them, where we're not at the mercy of forces that are so much greater than us. What chance do we have? No, God is for us and is overwhelmingly more powerful than everything that's opposed to us being successful and growing spiritually.
It makes me think of Jesus up on the mount before he stepped into his ministry. He's getting tempted by Satan in 3 different areas, and that was definitely coming from the outside. But Satan was attacking areas that were very relevant to his flesh, to things he's probably warring against in his mind. Like, I could just have it all now and not have to suffer. You know what I'm saying? Like, if he was fully human and fully God, he had both sides of the thought world coming at him.
He just had the perfect maturity and the perfect understanding by virtue of who he is, who he was,
And that's another key.
to see it clearly.
Yeah, sorry. And I feel like Jesus gives us a really good illustration of the principle of being aware and also being still and quiet and getting away for a while. 40 days, that was his wilderness period. That's what gave him the strength, because it drowned out all the other noise. Every time somebody has a big transformation in their life, there's usually a wilderness period that they have to go through first. And it's because that lets you get still and quiet and present with God. And that gives you the power to fight all the stuff that's going to come up.
You get somewhere that's away from all of the distractions and the justifications and the outside things to focus on. And all of a sudden, if it's just you and everything going on inside that you have to deal with and reconcile.
And fasting is like a fast way to get there. Fast way to get through your trials and to the next level would be to fast. It's like instant trial, and you get more aware of the negative stuff that's coming up. But let's back up, though. That's one really intentional way to work through your stuff and choose life instead. However, I want to get back to just the day-to-day. How do people do this on a day-to-day? Well, we said awareness is the first step. Most of the time, I think it can be as simple as noticing a thought and just being aware that it's not you and letting it go. Because every time you do that, you're taking a rock out of the bucket. And then if you're tuned into God at the same time and just connected with him, I think it automatically fills as you empty it out. It's like the hose is already turned on. If you're connected, the hose is filling the bucket with water.
Right. As
you take the rocks out, you can get the water higher.
If you're intentionally pursuing a relationship with God, you don't have to go out of your way to, all right, I'm going to choose to believe this thing in the Bible. No, it's just,
I think what
if you're filling your mind with those things, the filling process happens.
I think the process seems very complicated and very hard for people to implement, because a lot of the time you hear you have to notice every thought, take it captive, and then turn it around. I don't think that you have to do that for every single thought, because you're literally not going to be thinking about anything else all day. You
Right.
can literally just be aware.
That's a full-time job.
You can notice every thought, but when it comes up, literally what I do, I just let it go. Because I mean, if you're well versed, I think everybody knows what's good and bad. I think everybody on some level knows. If you get a thought, just let it go and realize it's just out there, because you're not your thoughts on either side. You're just you and God filling you.
So ultimately, really what we're talking about through all of this today is the idea of being aware of your thoughts, realizing they're not you, and you get to choose whether or not to believe and cultivate what they are.
It really all starts with the thoughts.
That's the whole process in a nutshell. And choosing life, evaluating whether or not a thought that's passing by is life or death, and treating it accordingly.
And you make enough of those life-affirming, life-filling choices, and you literally change your life in every area that you work on.
One thought at a time is like grains of sand, and gradually, one grain at a time, you've got the hourglass with the grains of sand, and it
adds up.
It adds up.
Your focus creates your reality. But what you think you're focused on isn't always what you're focused on. That's why the Bible tells us to take every thought captive. When we do that, we shine the light and we are able to let it go and give it to our Savior. When you do this, you